Hello once again, I'm Kositoe Obresidupane, the Director of SIAC, which stands for Constitutional Implementation and Governance Consulting. Today we reflect on a video that has been making rounds on social media, wherein MEC Ramathuba is seen and heard engaging with a patient in one of the hospitals. I must say that there have been proponents and opponents to this particular video. And there have as well been opinions given by various people on our continent. This includes, among others, the former president of Malawi, Ms. Joyce Banda, who in all honesty reflected truthfully on the challenges that we are faced with as a continent, and indicated that unless and until these particular issues are not resolved, we will forever see the influx of people moving into South Africa. This response came as a response to the articulations made or statement made by the MEC in the video around, one, the issue of the usage of limited resources, and two, the aspect of illegal immigrants getting into South Africa. It is important that we reflect on this particular video based on the constitutional values and provisions. But before we do that, it is critical that we ask ourselves the following questions. One, whether the MEC acted within her responsibilities. Two, whether the MEC treated this particular patient in a degrading manner and thus violated her right to human dignity. Three, whether the MEC unfairly discriminated against this particular patient. Four, and whether there are any analogous grounds upon which we can rely to say that the MEC certainly treated this particular patient indifferently. When we get into the aspect of resources, we need to ask ourselves a question as to what constitutional and legislative provisions are there around the question of use of resources and who has to determine the use thereof. The last question is on whether the MEC in the video acted wrongfully, unethically, and unconstitutionally. We now move to the constitutional provisions. One, we reflect on Section 7 of the Constitution, which affirms people's rights and respect thereto. It also reflects on the democratic values of human dignity, equality, and freedom. We move to Section 10 of the Constitution, which guarantees the right to human dignity. We further move to Section 21 of the Constitution, which is about entry into the Republic, in other words, freedom of movement. Subsection 3 of this particular provision provides that every citizen has the right to enter, to remain in, and reside anywhere in the Republic. Emphasis is on the citizen. We now move to Section 27, which is about healthcare, which provides that everyone has the right to access to healthcare service, and that the state must take measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of this particular right. And further, that no one may be refused emergency medical treatment. This clause does not limit protection only to citizens. It says everyone. It is also important that we reflect on Section 133 of the Constitution, which allows the Premier of a province to assign a function to a member of the Executive Council, in this regard to MEC Ramathuba. Section 133, subsection 3 provides that an MEC has to perform his or her functions by acting in accordance with the Constitution. We move to Section 135 of the Constitution, which says that before an MEC can assume his or her responsibility or perform such, he or she has to swear or affirm faithfulness to the Republic and obedience to the Constitution. It is therefore expected of MEC Ramathuba to have acted in accordance with the Constitution, specifically when it comes to Section 133, subsection 3, which demands such. We should also remember that Section 237 of the Constitution demands that constitutional obligations must be performed diligently and without delay. We go back to Section 21(3) of the Constitution, which says that every citizen has the right to enter, to remain in, and reside anywhere in the Republic. Any person, therefore, I submit that any person, save for citizens who enter the Republic, has the right to do so only in line with our Immigration Act. We also know about asylum seekers whose acceptance into the country is regulated by the Refugees Act. But the Immigration Act is very specific about the aspect of admission into the country and determines residency accordingly. I submit further that any person who enters the Republic without meeting the requirements of this particular legislation will be declared to be an illegal immigrant. In South Africa, we are always guided by our judiciary on how to interpret, apply, and limit the provisions of the Constitution. In this case, we are guided by the Subramani case, wherein the Constitutional Court looked into the aspects of Section 27 once more. Subramani versus Minister of Health in KwaZulu-Natal. In this case, the court said what is apparent from this particular provision of health care is that it is dependent upon the resources that are available for such purposes, and that the corresponding rights themselves are limited by reason of lack of resources. The court borrowed from the international case, the British one, of R versus Cambridge Health Authority. In that regard, that particular court had to describe the dilemma confronting health authorities which relate to the aspect of limited resources. In that matter, the court said that difficult and agonizing judgments have to be made as to how a limited budget is best allocated to the maximum advantage of the maximum number of patients. It further said that that is not a judgment which the court can make. Our Constitutional Court, therefore, borrowed from that particular case of R versus Cambridge in Britain. In that case, the court did not want to interfere with the responsibility of another arm. Hence, it indicated that that is not a judgment which a court can make. We as a country have adopted this particular principle by being guided by our Constitutional Court. I therefore submit that it is the responsibility of MEC Ramathuba, from the principle of separation of power, to determine the usage and use of resources within her portfolio. It is therefore important as well just to reflect quickly on what the Constitutional Court said in Subramani. Justice Madala said that some rights in the Constitution are the ideal and something to be strived for. In some instances, the Constitution states in so many words that the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve progressive realization of these rights. One of the limiting factors to the attainment of the Constitution's guarantees is that of limited or scarce resources. Justice Sachs went further to say that when rights by their very nature are shared and interdependent, striking appropriate balance between equally valid entitlements or expectations of a multitude of claimants should not be seen as imposing limits on those rights, but as defining the circumstances in which the rights may most fairly and effectively be enjoyed. Given the above judgment by the Constitutional Court in Subramani and the borrowed one from the foreign case of R versus Cambridge, I therefore submit that the MEC acted within her responsibilities. She did not treat the patient in a degrading manner. She did not unfairly discriminate against the patient. and that there are no analogous grounds upon which we can rely to say that the MEC treated this particular patient indifferently. I further submit that the MEC had the powers to decide on the use of available limited resources in the best manner beneficial to the citizens of the Republic as well as to other people. But in general, the principle is that the MEC had the powers to do so. I conclude by saying that MEC Ramathuba did not act wrongfully, unethically, nor did she act unconstitutionally. Thank you very much.